So for dinner on Friday, we are having vegetable soup. So I have green beans, corn, and peas and carrots back here. Vegetable bouillon cubes, potatoes, Creole seasoning, garlic, bay leaves, parsley, a zucchini, Montreal steak seasoning, onion, and mushrooms. And you throw it all in a pot and boil it.
So basically I just chopped everything up really fine. I chopped the onions, the zucchini, the mushrooms, all into small pieces. And then in the biggest pot that I had, which was actually really small for what I wanted to do, I just had some oil and I sauteed everything. So I sauteed the onions and the zucchini, and then I just dumped all my frozen veggies in. And I actually forgot to cut the potatoes, and so that's what I'm doing right here, is cutting the potatoes and adding them in. And then I added, I want to say it was 6 to 8 cups of water, and then I added 3 cubes of the vegetable bouillon and covered it and let it sit until the potatoes were completely cooked through. And I actually did forget to add my spices before I covered it, so I had to uncover it and add my spices. I used 2 bay leaves, just a little Montreal steak seasoning and a little Cajun seasoning, and then a lot of parsley because I do love parsley. And then I adjusted at the very end because of course everything will absorb. The potatoes will absorb the flavor and everything, so if you're not careful, this can be really spicy, even if you don't add a lot of spice.
There's dinner for tonight. Veggie soup, and then I just added a slice of bread with some margarine to dip in.
So for dinner on this day, we had Instant Pot white chicken chili. So I ended up turning my Instant Pot on to saute. I sauteed the onions and I seared the chicken on both sides. I didn't fully cook it through because, of course, it's going to cook in the Instant Pot. So it's going to cook through in the Instant Pot, and I didn't want dry chicken. And then I just added in the rest of the ingredients after I was done. The chicken broth, rotel, corn, the white chili seasoning packet, which I should have added when I was searing the chicken, but I didn't. And I did lose a little bit of flavor because of that. And then I pressure cooked it for 14 minutes, and after it was done, I released the pressure, took all the chicken out. I chunked it up really, really small to where it was basically in like shredded pieces. And then I added in some cream cheese and let that melt and added the chicken back in.
And there we go. Chicken chili, cheese, yogurt, or yogurt as a sour cream substitute, and avocado. And if I had any chips, I'd top it with that as well.
So for dinner this night, I decided to make buffalo chickpea spaghetti squash. So instead of chicken, I did chickpeas. So I just cooked my spaghetti squash. I seared my chickpeas on both sides and just kind of browned them. I tossed in some garlic powder and then probably a half a cup of buffalo sauce. And then I did end up adding some coconut milk yogurt just to kind of tone down the heat because we didn't want really spicy. We just wanted the flavor of the buffalo because my son was still eating it. And then I just made a really simple dressing to go over the top. It was just hummus, lemon juice, tahini, and water, and some buffalo sauce. It was really, really good. So after I got everything cooked and shredded, I mixed it all up in a bowl and then put it back in the shells. And I just broiled it for a couple minutes just to kind of get the tops a little brown and to give the sauce mixture time to kind of solidify and give it like a different texture. And then I ended up adding the rest of the sauce mixture back on top to give it that creamy texture.
And there's dinner for tonight.
So on this night, I just made a really simple potato soup. I couldn't find the recipe I was going to use, so I just came up with one on the fly, and it didn't work the way I wanted it to, but it still tasted good in the end. So I started off making a roux, and I don't know if it was the roux I didn't wait long enough, or I didn't have enough flour compared to the amount of broth that I ended up adding, but it didn't really work to thicken it. So I ended up having to add cornstarch in at the end. But I ended up sauteing onions in another pan because I wasn't able to do that in the pan I had. And then I added some chopped up potatoes and waited until they were like fork tender. And then I ended up mashing them with a potato masher to give it like a nicer texture. Instead of huge chunks of potato, it would be just like little tiny bits. And that did work to thicken it up pretty well. But like I said, I still had to add the cornstarch slurry. So this right here is probably one of the worst mistakes I have ever made while cooking. I knew I wanted to add cream cheese for the taste and for the texture it gives it, and I was out of the block cream cheese, so I just added some whipped bagel cream cheese, and it took forever to combine and come together. So I probably will never do that again. I'll just opt out of it. But I ended up adding some freshly shredded cheddar cheese and tried to go back in with a potato masher and with a whisk and try to break up those clumps. It took me forever to do this. And I just let it sit, and I kept letting it simmer, and I kept using the potato masher and the whisk and the spoon, just trying to get the whipped cream cheese to combine with the soup. But it all worked out in the end. It ended up melting and combining with the soup. I ended up adding the cornstarch slurry in, and it got really, really nice and thick. I added in some bacon bits, and then I had some cheese and more bacon bits to serve with it. However, I didn't get an shot of that, and I'm sorry.
So tonight for dinner we are having Mexican stuffed sweet potatoes.
So I realized pretty quickly into doing this that these sweet potatoes were not big enough for what I wanted, and they also were really weirdly shaped, so it would have been incredibly hard to stuff these. So I ended up chopping them up. I chopped everything else up, and I just added them to the mixture. And I just basically did like a quinoa sweet potato bowl. So I cooked my quinoa separately. I cooked my sweet potatoes separately and mashed them in a different bowl, or mashed them in a different pot. However, the pot or the pan that I used to saute everything was not near big enough, so I ended up having to put it all in the sweet potato pan. And I probably should have used an even bigger pot, but that was my mistake. So I just combined everything, and then once it was done combining, I let it sit for a minute or two while I got the bowls and got the toppings ready. And then once I was done with that, I went ahead and put it in bowls and served it with toppings on it.
And there's dinner for tonight.
So I know in my grocery video I talked about how I wanted to be more healthy. However, this was a really, really stressful day, and I did not feel like making anything, so we just ordered some pizza and a brownie. But I did make a green smoothie to try and at least counteract how unhealthy the pizza was.